All right, everyone, good evening. For those of you here watching here on Zoom, welcome back. I guess we'll call this part 2 of the presentation. You saw the behind the scenes chatting going on, and now it's time for the real event. For those of you tuning in on Facebook, you just missed some good chatter. So be sure to pre-register for future events so you can get in on it too. So we are very excited to continue our series of events for this month, all about sustainability. And tonight we have Jeff with us from Bonterra Vineyards. We're so excited that Jeff was able to join us tonight. Also on the line tonight, you have Lisa, our wine marketing specialist, and Megan and Josh. So between the 5 of us, we are here to answer all of your questions, but I'm going to turn things over to Jeff. Tonight, it's the Jeff Bonterra, well, that's not his last name, but the Jeff and Bonterra show. So Jeff, take it away.
Great. Hey, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming to this virtual tasting. And my name is Jeff Cichocki. I'm the winemaker for Bonterra Vineyards. I've been making these wines for, about 13 years now. So quite a while. It's great to reach out to everybody and answer questions for folks. So we'll try to keep this a nice casual affair with a lot of maybe some interaction. Please use the chat feature or a Q&A feature to ask questions, and we'll get to everyone. So like I said, I've been making the wines for a number of years now at Bonterra. I think we're going to start a little PowerPoint for some background, some slides to give you some idea where we are, what the place looks like. Bonterra is actually, let's start with the name. Actually, it's really a fun place to start. Actually, Bonterra is actually a mixture of 2 languages: Bon, French, and Terra, Latin. So it actually means good, Bon, good, and Terra, earth. So good earth. So there's a little mixture of 2 languages, and it kind of gives you an idea of our theory, our practices, and how we operate here. We try to be good stewards of the land, take care of the earth. And this week is Earth Week, of course, and Earth Day is coming up in a couple of days. So it's a good time to talk about sustainability and the efforts we've been making here at Bonterra for the last over 30 years. And we'll talk about some of that history in a little bit. But, just bottom line, our wines are made from certified organic grapes, always have been. We come from certified organic vineyards. And we're one of the largest producers of wines. I guess we are the largest producer of wines made from organically grown grapes. It's a unique category that the world has caught up with us. We were, actually, back over 30 years ago in 87, we were really, people didn't understand what organic meant, and what that the food movement we have today was not even close to what it was back then. So we really have come a long way, and the world sort of caught up with Bonterra. We were a little out there, and people didn't know what we were doing at first. We had to explain a lot more. And now you can commonly find organic produce throughout your supermarkets, not just specialty stores anymore. But so it's been a long journey, and it's good to see growth each year in interest in organics. And we're here to talk about that today and how it applies to wine and the wines we make. And then we'll talk about each of the individual wines in a little bit later, and answer some questions, taste through them if you grabbed bottles so far, and just make sure everybody is aware of what we're doing. So the next slide here is a map, because it's really important about when it comes to wines is, where the grapes are grown, where in relation to the ocean they are farmed, what soils you have, the actual climate. And there's a big map here that shows Mendocino County in general. That's where we're from. It's a county about 2 hours north of San Francisco. If you see that small map there, the southern portion of that tiny little map is San Francisco Bay, and Mendocino County about 2 hours north of that. And you can see we're right on the Pacific Ocean. Very important geographic location, because the Pacific Ocean at this off the coast here is really cold. It never warms up. It's around 50 to 50, maybe to 60 degrees. It gets the most in the summertime. But we have very warm days in the summertime and very cool nights. and that ocean really moderates our temperature. So it's really important to grow quality grapes in an area that's really conducive to it. And this is Mendocino County. It certainly is. It's been our home from the beginning. It's where the Fetzer family, which is the original family that started Fetzer Winery, came to over 50 years ago. They started Fetzer in 68. So there's a long history here of grape growing, much before that, in fact. But the Fetzer family came here and really established Fetzer brand, and then in the 80s started the Bonterra brand. So it's been around quite a while. We go on to the next slide to give an idea what the landscape looks like too. So here's one of our vineyards at the McNabb Ranch. You can see oak studded hillsides, some dry grass in the background, the green kind of lush vineyard in the foreground. And this is actually looking west toward the setting sun at this point here. And so, like I said, off in the distance is the ocean, which has these prevailing winds, which cool down our region every night. And it's much different than most places in the United States in that we really don't get any rain in the spring or even into the summertime at all. We'll have 5-6 months with no rain, which seems ridiculous for most parts of the world, but it's really important for us. We get most of our rain in the wintertime. In a normal year, about 35 inches of rain. Fill up our reservoirs, fill up our creeks and our lakes, and then throughout the course of the year, we water the vines with drip irrigation. Actually, if you look very closely at the vineyard rows at the bottom, you can see a little horizontal line there. That's a little black tube that drips water right to the root base of the vine. So we use water very carefully. And generally, we have no wells. We always take surface water, so we try not to deplete any aquifers locally. All the rain we catch, we use that year. So it's really a good balance. So anyway, Mendocino is really the home of Bonterra. We have this McNabb Ranch here is really the home of Bonterra's. We have a barn here for events, for trade purposes. So if you're in the industry and you come out here, that we'll host you there and teach you, much like we are right now, talking about wines and teach you about the different varieties we make. So let me give you a quick history of how it came about too, because it's quite an interesting story. I mentioned the Fetzer family, and in the mid 80s, they were really seriously pushing the idea of wine as food and wine as a companion to your dinners, just your life and enjoying life. Because actually at the same time, there was another movement which kind of painted wine and alcohol in a bad light. There's an anti-alcohol movement. There was a very strong drunk driving movement, which is still, obviously very important. But wine was getting categorized in almost the drug category. And the Fetzer family really thought that was the wrong direction. And they really wanted to say that wine was really part of life. It's part of your dinners. It's part of the celebration of everyday, enjoying with food. And so the Fetzer family became part of a very early on food movement, which really focused on food and wine pairing. In order to do that, they planted a 5-acre organic farm garden with fruits and vegetables, maybe 15, 20 different types of tomatoes, things that, we take for granted today, but weren't around back then. So, back in the mid 80s, you probably got 3 types of tomatoes. You got beefsteak, cherry tomatoes, and maybe Romas, and that's about it. Now your shelves are full of heirloom tomatoes of every shape and color and sweetness. We've come a long way. But these are like pioneering efforts to really focus food and wine pairing. And this organic garden was run by a farmer named Michael Maltos, who's was Organic Gardener of the Year in the 80s. I forget which year exactly, but he was in charge of the garden, and he was looking at what was surrounding the garden. It was all the acreage of vineyards, and he was convincing the Fetzer family that look at the quality we're getting from this organic garden. We can apply these same techniques at scale and really turn these conventional farmed vineyards at the time into organically farmed vineyards. And that really hadn't been done at scale yet. So that was something that could be a challenge, but with some persuasion for a while, he was able to convince the Fetzer family to start converting some of these vineyards to organic. And what that means is, at the root is not using any synthetic pesticides, herbicides, or fertilizers. And so first we experimented with a couple acres here, a couple acres there, see how the vines responded. and they were seeing some good results. It was a little trial by error, and and there's no way people weren't teaching this in the universities. There was no organic viticulture at the time, so we had to, a lot of times it was just experimentation with different methods, how to deal with pests if there were some, if you're not fertilizing with synthetic fertilizer, what do you replace it with? So some of these questions were, challenges, and but they were met with, very much positivity, and we're going to be able to figure this out. And as history goes, we came up with some methods, and maybe the next slide might show some of them too, if you want to move on to the next one. That's another shot of McNabb, which is one of our home ranch. And here's, this is good. This is a shot of one of our mountaintop vineyards called Butler Ranch. So one of our, it's really a great spot for red grape varieties, thin soils, lots of different exposures, but a great view too. You can see down below is the valley of the Ukiah Valley, where we are right near north of Hopland, which is Ukiah is the county seat. And Mendocino is a big county, but very sparsely populated. That's the county seat. There's only 15,000 people in that whole city, and the county itself only has 80,000. So it's really sparsely populated and mostly wild. Most of it's mountainous hills full of redwoods and oaks, and remote places hard to get to because there's a lot of hills and twisty roads. So a good spot to grow grapes, though. It's really ideal for especially organic grapes, because we have the ocean influence, like I mentioned earlier, keeping the region cool at night. It can be very hot during the day in the summertime, maybe 90 degrees, 95 degrees, but each evening it'll cool off to 60. So we'll have this diurnal temperature swing every day, which is really actually a great place to live in general, just because you know if it's 95 degrees, it's going to cool off that night, and you can enjoy a nice cool evening and open up your house and cool it down. So, but also consequently is great for growing grapes too, because it allows the grapes to slowly mature. If in certain hot areas you can grow grapes, but they tend to ripen around the clock if it never cools off. So having this shift in temperatures every day really allows the grapes to ripen over a slow period of time and extends the growing season out. So we're picking grapes in late August and September, and even to October. So you take full advantage of the growing season.
So Jeff, can I ask you a question about
Sure.
this slide?
Yeah.
So let's see. Somebody tuning in named, she's got a great name. Her name's Carol Ann. She's wondering, just kidding, it's me. Can this spot be visited? I want to come here.
Yeah, I know. It looks beautiful, isn't it? Yeah. It is not open to the public right now. If you're part of the trade, there's a chance you can get in. You got to know someone. And I guess everybody knows me now, so you know someone. So as far as trade, we're not open to the public as of yet, which is it's tough. It's very remote. It actually takes about almost 45 minutes to get to the spot from the highway, because it's just on a dirt road that winds up the mountain. Yeah, this is a beautiful spot, the Butler Ranch. In fact, it was originally more of the public was there, because before we owned it, it was a U-pick cherry ranch. They grew cherries at 2,000 feet in there, and families would go up there for the afternoon and pick cherries and take them home or eat them there. And it was, make a day of it. So, and we kept a lot of the cherry trees. Actually, you can see just past the pond, there's a grove of trees. And those are all cherry trees down there, and they have bright red cherries, always ready about 4th of July every year. It's a really awesome time to be there. This, judging from the greenness of the valley below, this is more in the springtime. Also, you can see some clouds and stuff in there, so it looks like the weather is more of a spring-like time in the late spring. The vines are pretty far along in this picture. Cool. So anyway, so as I said, we are this organic gardener Michael Maltos really convinced the Fetzer family to convert acreage and found success in it. And we created some techniques farming that like cover crops. That's planting seeds blend between the rows of the vines to basically fix nitrogen and increase the fertility of the soil. We do some low till. We incorporate animals in the vineyards. We attract beneficial insects. So a lot of the things that these synthetics were achieving, pesticides, herbicides, and fertilizers, we're able to replace, by cover crop, like I mentioned, light till or to no till in the vineyards, or alternating till is what we like to do. Is every other row of the vineyard maybe we till with the discs. Also composting. So what's not used in the winery, the skins and the stems and the seeds, can actually have some nutrient value left. So what we'll do is we'll compost those and then actually return them back to the vineyard after a year of composting and cooking down. The other thing is incorporating animals in the vineyard, getting fresh manure in the vineyard by way of sheep. You can see there's another view from Butler Ranch, just a gorgeous, gorgeous view. And you can see what I just mentioned, alternating. So one row is tilled, you see dirt through the vineyard vine row, but the vine row where the camera is sitting is just mowed down too. So we alternate tillage and non-tillage as a way to keep the soil kind of healthy and allow some of the tractors in there still too, in case, because if it's all loose dirt, it's tough to navigate this type of steep hillside. So we also, one of the things the tenants too is also allowing the natural world into the vineyards as well. So we're favorable to beneficial insects and birds, and we have a lot of animals. There's wild animals up here. This mountaintop vineyard here, Butler, does have a bear which comes in here and eats hundreds and hundreds of pounds of Malbec grapes every year. He likes the Malbec grapes. I don't know why, but literally, you should see the paw prints too. They're this big. It's amazing. I've never seen them. I've seen the wildlife camera of them, but he also, or she, I don't know if it's he or she, honestly, haven't asked. But they know when the grapes are ripe too, because they get the grapes maybe like the week before we want to pick them too, which is hilarious because, hey, they're yeah, I see the comment here. The bear has good taste. It sure does. And it knows when to pick them too, because it knows the sugars levels probably as well as I do, because it's out there every day. So anyway, we embrace the nature as much as we can, because having balance in the vineyard is not having a monoculture. It's inviting these outside influences in, whether it's birds, raptors. So we have hawks here that keep down our gopher population, because that's a pest too. It eats at the roots of the vines. It can cause damage to the soil. So we have raptor perches, so a perch that sits up 30 feet in the air, just a handy place for a hawk to hang out and search the ground for gophers popping their heads out. So we're looking for that balance in there. And there's a lot of ways to achieve that through just observation and letting the natural world into your vineyard. And there's other things, we try to keep other things out. Deer could be damaging. So we do have deer fences. So we're selective. Not everybody gets to get in there. So anyway, over the course of the years, we've converted all our owned acreages, 1,000, or some of our, there's some good helpers there in the vineyards. There are four-legged lawnmowers there. You can see this is in the winter time there. You can see the vines are not pruned, and there's no leaves on the vines. So we've learned ways to adapt to many of these techniques, and we've been very obviously successful in growing throughout the years. And I think it really shows the health of the vines, and then the health and quality of the grapes we get off the vines, and then the wines we put together each year. In addition to just the organic farming, that's what I've been mostly focusing on, because I think that's one of the keys to getting good, making wonderful wines. The Fetzer corporate family, and in turn, the ownership now, we've also done other sustainable methods throughout, the production of the wines as well too. We were one of the first wineries to be 100% green energy. We're a zero waste facility, which it means we send less than 2% to the landfill, which is tremendous for a company this size. We're very conscious of water usage. We have we just installed just another year or so ago we use a worm bed, a giant worm bed that cleans our wastewater before being discharged into the surrounding vineyards. So these worms actually take and it's just winery wastewater. So it's basically just the rinse water from equipment. So it's just like great byproducts anyway, all from natural grapes generally. So it's not like a wastewater program you'd have in a municipality or anything like that. But we're constantly looking for ways to make sure our carbon footprint's small. Improve the land we farm on, because farming, if you think about it, does deplete nutrition from the soil. So each year we constantly try to put back into because we know we want to, and the word that we're looking towards in the future is the idea of regenerative farming, and you'll hear that talked about more and more these days. And we've been using regenerative farming in the form of organic farming or biodynamic farming, but it looks at the big picture of the health of the farm, the health of the soils, health of the animals. The sheep in there, we have like 3,000 head of sheep running in there seasonally. It's quite amazing. Lots of life in the vineyard too. And that's what these still photographs don't really explain until you get out there, is there's birds everywhere. There's sheep out there making noise, insects buzzing. It's just teeming with life. And that's a good sign. If you're in a conventional vineyard that's plowed down and the soil's pulverized to dust, it's pretty still. It's pretty silent. And when you see the two side by side, it's amazing how much life we have in the vineyard, and how we really, add to the soils each year and add to the complexity of the biodiversity that's out there. So I think what we can do, let's see, I think we have a slide or two more I can comment on, and then we can start talking about wines and then taking some more questions. Okay, yeah, I thought it was the last one. Okay, so I talked to you about how the concept came about of Bonterra. It was basically an organic garden. Really realized the quality of the fruits and vegetables that came from it. We applied those same principles. We wondered if we could do it at scale, and certain enough we were able to accomplish this. And in turn, the brand was born in around 1990, once our vineyards became certified organic. It does take 3 years to certify a vineyard, so there's a conversion period too. So if we started converting in 87, by 1990, I think our first wine was produced. It was a Fetzer wine at the time, and then slowly we developed the Bonterra label. It's Bonterra by Fetzer, and then shortly it became its own brand in its own right. And that was over 30 years ago now. So it's been a long time. The wines have developed over the time, and we have a nice portfolio of wines. And what we can do is sample 5 of them here. We'll talk about and just describe them. And and we do make more than these 5 wines, of course. But this is a nice sampling, and we'll jump right in with the Sauvignon Blanc. So I'm gonna sample myself too, so I will keep up with everybody. And also I like tasting with the group too, because it prompts me to remember different aromatics and flavor profiles that I may forget. So our Sauvignon Blanc is a very, I'd like to say, a really lively style Sauv Blanc, kind of New World in aroma. If you smell it, it's got a lot of grapefruit and citrus in the wine. Really one of our signatures, one of our key notes to it. Very vibrant, bright, lime, lemon zest. There's a little bit of tropical fruit in there as well. We farm numerous acreages of our own of Sauv Blanc, but we also buy some certified organic grapes from grape growers who are just to the east of us in Lake County, which is right next to Mendocino County. It's a little higher elevation, and most of the vineyards surround a large lake. One of a very large freshwater lake in Lake County, one of the oldest lakes in the country. It's amazing. This number, you're not going to believe it, but it's true. The lake is 350,000 years old. It's an incredibly old lake, and there's some incredibly great soils nice around the lake too. And one of the ways we get those great New World aromas of citrus and grapefruit, and even some passion fruit, is we try to grow the grapes in a nice shaded canopy. So we like to see the canopy, the leaves and the canes slightly shade the fruit. So we capture some of this nice citrus and grapefruit aromas. If you ripen Sauv Blanc grapes in the sun with a lot of sun exposure, they kind of lean towards more of a tropical aroma, more guava, some pineapple, those are aromas. But we're really, our signature is this, for the Sauv Blanc, is really this grapefruit aroma. So we really try to capture that. We pick it in a lower sugar level to make sure that we get a good acidity, because as grapes ripen, they start out with just nothing but little tiny, basically the little grapes are just full of acid. And as they grow and ripen into larger sizes, there's a conversion from the acid to sugar, and or the sugar accumulates in the grape, and the acid gets diluted a little bit. Is how it really works. So we try to find the right point at the ripeness of the vine, the grape on the vine, to capture just enough acidity and just enough sugar to get the right balance. So the wine's around 13% alcohol, means we use the scale Brix to measure the level of sugar in the grapes. And we always try to aim around 21 to 22 Brix in the vineyard. And we're also tasting the fruit too, just taste the acidity and the flavors. But then we convert it to alcohol. It works about 9 to 13%. This is around 13%, I think we have right here. This is nearly almost 100%. I'm sorry, this is 2020. We have a little bit of blender in here. We have about 90% Sauv Blanc in this wine. We have a little bit of Verdelho, which is an interesting grape, Italian grape, that small percentage in there to kind of accentuate some of the citrus aromas as well. So it's one of the things we also is a nice acidity, of course, in a Sauv Blanc, and like almost like a thirst quenchingness to it too. So as you try the wine, you'll notice it coats your mouth, a good acidity, and it really is bright, lively. Your tongue can feel the acid. Wine's fermented in stainless steel tanks that are fermented cold. So that kind of captures some of the nice fresh fruit aromas of the grapes. We use specific yeasts that create the thiols or the flavors we like. So something like the passion fruit aromas and the citrus. Certain yeasts can actually bring those out in the grapes as well. All stainless steel, like I said, and just a very pure style, very varietally correct Sauv Blanc, kind of New World in style. Yeah, no oak on it. We don't want to complicate the wine with any oak. And just a wine that's super refreshing. This is my house wine, so I know all about it. So it's our go-to in our house. That's if the wine fridge is not full of exotic wines from all over the world. It's full of this right here. So that's easy. It's our go-to wine in our house, especially in the springtime and the summertime as well. It's just a perfect wine for that.
So Jeff, I don't have a question for you, but I would like to just give a shout out to Matthew, he's watching on Facebook. He's part of Horizon's team. He has actually been to your winery. He's watching on Facebook and says nothing like enjoying the Sauvignon Blanc in your vineyard.
Oh, no, thanks. I'm glad I had a good experience there. Yeah, if you're lucky enough to work for the industry and your trade coming out for educational purposes, yeah, it's a nice little experience, and I'm glad he enjoyed that. That's wonderful. It's heck, I enjoy it too. Every time I go out with dozens of groups every year, and I get a thrill of enjoying taking people out there as well too. So cheers, and thank you for the nice comment. Awesome. Yeah, there's nothing like having a glass of wine in the vineyard it was grown in. There's no better connection to the planet than that. I think it's just enjoying, the beauty of the bounty we can create each year. So that's a great place to start in our wine portfolio today. Let's move on to any other questions we can address now, or wait till Q&A later. I'm not sure. What do you think, Carolyn?
Well, Tracy also left a nice comment that she loves that this wine is unoaked. Thank you.
Oh, good. Yeah.
We did have a question about current pricing, which for those of you watching on Facebook, Lisa did answer this in the chat, but I will also share. For those of you who can't see, the Bonterra Sauvignon Blanc is currently on sale in our stores for $11.99. It is available at most of our stores, but you can check inventory for your specific store at liquorandwineoutlets.com. And Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this wine is eligible for this month's case sale also.
It is eligible for 15% off 12 bottles or more on any of, it's called the Wicked White Wine Sale. And the Bonterra Sauvignon Blanc and the Chardonnay are both qualify for that case sale.
Awesome. So if you guys like this one, get a case now.
It's definitely a great summer wine. So you should stock up now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a fun wine, and I'm not sure what formats you have right now in your stores, but obviously the most popular is the bottle, but we do have we're experimenting with cans and bag and boxes. So there's some fun formats in the future. And also we do keg this wine too. So if you're in a restaurant that has wine by the glass from kegs, it's very possible they could carry this one too. So it's kind of fun there too. It's very good, very actually green way to serve wine because we use reusable stainless steel kegs. There's no waste, no packaging. So it's really kind of cool too. So we're experimenting with different methods of formats. The classic is the bottle. And I like, one of my favorite is the bottle too, because there's some drawbacks to other methods, size, shape, ageability, but the glass is the classic format for sure. One thing we did experiment though is when I did taste the wine on a draft in a keg at a restaurant, here's a little side story that they push with something called bev gas, which is a blend of nitrogen and CO2, to push the wine out of the keg. And when the wine sits on this bev gas touching it, it absorbs a little more CO2. And it got to the point, it was sat there for a week or so, and it got to the point of having a little spritz to it too. And I kind of loved it. So we kind of figured out what that was. And we actually adjusted the CO2 level in the bottle before our bottling now to kind of approximate what we tasted in that keg. And it actually was really, we loved it because we bumped up the CO2 level, because it's one of the few adjustments you can make at bottling. So it's, it's not quite bubbly, but it gives it some more life to the wine. So we're always open to new stuff and tweaking things a little bit if we think the wine product will become better. Cool. So let's move on to the next wine. It's our second white wine of the flight. It's a Chardonnay. It's on the screen now. One of the first wines that was produced by Bonterra. The very first one was a red blend because we didn't Syrah and some other grapes, but because we just didn't have enough certified organic grapes to make much more than that. So, but over the years, Chardonnay became one of the early most popular wines from Bonterra. It is our most popular SKU as of now. We make more Chardonnay than any other wine in our portfolio. And I think the reason is it's just a really nice Chardonnay, bottom line. I mean, and one of the things is, as much as we like to talk about the organic farming and our history and the sustainability measures, our goal really is to make really great wines that just happen to be organic. We don't have to lead with organic. We really want the quality of the wine to show through first, and the added benefit is it happens to be organically grown and organically made in the cellar. So I think this is a testament to that, is the style and the quality of the Chardonnay is such that people really find it very appealing. And it's a Chardonnay with a lot of things for people to like. It's 70% barrel fermented. So 70% of the pressed grape juice goes into new and used barrels. It's fermented there in these 60-gallon barrels. And it stays most of its life, 6 months in the barrel, perhaps 7 months, depending on the year. The other 30% is fermented in stainless steel. So like the Sauvignon Blanc, kind of retains its nice crisp fruit and crisp acidity. And the combination of those things going together really creates a nice wine that has a lot of balance to it, has some richness from the barrel fermentation. There's a little hint of oak, new oak. It's not much new oak on this, only 15%, 1.5. So a small amount of new oak in there, just enough to give it a little hint of vanilla, maybe a little toastiness, but not enough to overpower it. So what we're really looking for here is a nice balanced Chardonnay, one that's not one-dimensional, full of oak or full of butter from the malolactic fermentation. And there is some malolactic fermentation that happens in the barrels. And we can touch on that real quick. Malolactic fermentation is a secondary fermentation where it's conversion of malic acid, which is acid found in the grapes itself, a grape acid, and it converts it into lactic acid, which is a dairy acid. So when someone says a wine or a Chardonnay tastes buttery, it's like it does, because you've converted this fruit acid into a lactic acid, and it does have a buttery, kind of rich, creamy aroma. So that takes place partially in this wine, not completely, just enough to give it a little richness and some creaminess. But this wine is just, as we go up the scale here, it's a little more viscosity, a little heavier wine, a little higher alcohol. It's around 13.5, 13.6%. Like I said, since it's fermented in barrels, it does see contact with the lees, and the lees are the solids from the grapes and the solids from the yeast fermentation that's still in the barrel. And we stir those up monthly, and as the lees, these solids break down, they kind of release texture into the wine, no better way to put it, and allows the wine to feel richer and more unctuous, and just from aging in these barrels and and having some slight contact with the lees and some contact with oxygen too, because barrels, although they don't leak, they're porous when it comes to oxygen. Oxygen permeates the oak of the barrel. and in turn ages the wine in a slow and predictable way. So nice wine full of, I'd say, green apple and pear and some citrus. It really leads with a green apple and a pear. It's really a fresh style, fruit-forward Chardonnay that not too encumbered with too much oak or too much butter. It's funny. At wine tastings and big events, we used to have them. People would say, "Oh, I'm not really a Chardonnay drinker," but I'd like to, convince people to just try a taste of it and see if they like it, because it is such a balanced Chardonnay that I've converted a few anything but Chardonnay people over the years just by tasting this wine. So, I think there's something to like in this wine that's a lot of people can find. A little bit of
Jeff,
blending in here. Oh, sorry, question.
Well, Anna on Facebook, she's watching on Facebook. She wants you to know this is a great wine. And then Tracy here on Zoom is sipping her Chardonnay on her porch because it is despite the snow last week, it is a beautiful day in northern Massachusetts / southern New Hampshire today.
All right. That's excellent. You're going to force spring upon the land. That's great. I heard I have some snowy weather coming up too. So take advantage of your porch when you can. Great. So let's see. I was going to mention, there's a little bit of blending in here. We do blend in a little Viognier and a little Muscat. So those are two, if you're familiar with those varieties, those are two real floral varieties. So they bring a little floral lift to this wine too. So not 100% Chardonnay, about 10% blender in here with that Muscat and the Viognier, about 6% and 4% each. And they add a nice little floral lift to the wine. It lightens it up, I think, a little bit. That's been a signature from this wine from the very beginning, and we haven't changed it. We've contemplated it, wondered if people want more, pure Chardonnay flavors and aromas. But we realized when we do taste tests that people really find that little bit of blender in there really interesting and intriguing, and we maintain that percentage.
Jeff, do you happen to know the sugar content of the Chardonnay? Cynthia, who is watching here on Zoom, is curious.
Sure. We have 3 grams per liter in the Chardonnay. So for every liter of wine, there's 3 grams of RS, residual sugar. And that's not cane sugar, that's natural grape sugars that we've retained. So, naturally comes with the grape. We just found that was a spot which, if there's any, it just gives them wine some volume and some body. A very dry wine with a higher alcohol can tend to be a little thinner and maybe enhance some astringency or some bitterness. And we find that by leaving a gram or 2 per liter of RS in there, maybe 3 in the Chardonnay here, rounds out the wine and gives it a little more, just a little more weight to the wine. So a little bit, but it's all natural grape sugar, naturally occurring. Good question. Yeah, cool. And wines have various, it's amazing. Sometimes the natural grape sugar occurs because your fermentation stops before you want it to. Sometimes it's planned, and sometimes it's Zinfandels are notorious for having having higher residual sugar because it's a very finicky grape, and sometimes it just stops fermenting. So you have to deal with the residual sugar that's left in there. So, but these are purposely built for this chemistry we're trying to achieve here. And then like I said, these grapes come from Mendocino County, where we're grown here, Lake County, coastal vineyards throughout the state. It's one thing as we grow, we're venturing outside of Mendocino County just to have enough grapes for our programs. So we're venturing down to the Central Coast now too. So we have some certified organic vineyards we're working with down there in the Paso Robles area, so San Luis Obispo County. So we're kind of venturing out. What I like about it too is kind of hedges our bets and kind of adds some diversity to make sure we get consistency year to year. For instance, if we had an early storm in the wintertime or this fall up at north coast of California, we still have a good chance that the Central Coast is still going to be nice and dry and still ripening. So diversity is good from a standpoint for consistency too. Plus, you get some different little flavors too, and little different aromas and nuances from these different growing regions, whether that's Central Coast or Mendocino County or Lake County, or even the Lodi area, which is just east of San Francisco on the Delta, which is a nice cool spot too, which is has some really good quality grape growing areas there too, because they have a very big ocean influence, like we do here on the coast. They're a little more inland, but because they're directly east of the San Francisco Bay, there's no mountain range preventing the fog from just barreling in through the Golden Gate all the way inland to the Lodi area. So it's a very, very cool spot, despite being more inland if you look on the map. All right, so I think if no more questions on Chardonnay, we can probably move on to the next wine.
All right. Hey, before we move on, I do just want to call out one more comment that we got here on Zoom. So Kimberly, when we were talking about our Wicked White Wine sale, she has a great tip for everybody. Buy a case of wine in case you need it as hostess gifts as we get to start visiting with our friends and family more often. That is a great tip, Kimberly. And now onto the rosé. I'm so excited for this one. I wish I was sipping along tonight.
This is a fun one, and it just the popularity of rosé has just exploded over the course of the last 5-10 years. But and I enjoyed them too. And it, we thought we should make a nice dry style Bonterra rosé. And I think 17 or 16 was the first rosé we made. And I wasn't even allowed to do it. I was specifically told, don't make a rosé. We don't want to get into that market. We did anyway. we were gonna ask for forgiveness rather than permission. But there was never going to be a waste. We would always find a home for it if we couldn't, get one out to market. But anyway, it turned out to be a wonderful rosé, and we took first place in the local rosé competition here in Sonoma County, just south of here. Got great recognition. And we've kept that same style ever since. So our little clandestine experiment in the cellar turned out pretty good. And now we're up to almost it's probably a 20,000 case program or more now, which has been great. But the rosés that we really enjoyed are the ones that come from Provence in France, southern France. And the mixture of grapes in those are southern red Rhones. So we want to duplicate that. And the ones I liked the most were ones based on the Grenache grape. So that's how we source our fruit here from internal vineyards and external vineyards. And we like the grape to be the most prevalent in this wine to be Grenache. And then it follows with some Syrah, some Mourvedre. We do experiment with some Zinfandel in there. I have some Italian varieties in there too. It's like 14 different varieties. I can't name them all, and I will forget some. But there's some Sangiovese, some Nebbiolo in there as well. And kind of the common factor here is good red grapes that when they're underripe don't turn green or don't have green aromas, because we don't want underripe green flavors in a rosé. You want nice fresh fruit flavors. So that list of grapes really works quite well. You really wouldn't want to make a Cabernet from a rosé of Cabernet, because Cabernet is very green and it's underripe. So I want to stay away from that. But Grenache seems to be the grape of choice here. So one of the things is a very fruit forward grape too. You get great fruit with that mixture of all those grape varieties. When they're picked ripe like that, they're just full of good acidity, crisp, nice bright flavors. And we take a great effort to get the color just right. You can see this color in the glass is trying to be just like a pale pink that over time will slowly go into a salmon color, and that's just the right color we're thinking for that Provence style, dry style rosé. And when we say dry, this has 2 grams of RS. We talked about the residual sugar in the Chardonnay. This is a little less, just because we wanted to kind of mimic that really dry style from Provence. And just how do you get the color? It's kind of an interesting story. It's basically you don't squeeze the grapes too hard. That's what it comes down to. When you load the press, so you get a load of fruit in, you load the wine grape press, you press until you see the color start to changing or getting a little too dark, and then you stop pressing, and then you move on and then you cut off the pump and move it, save that wine. You'll probably press out the rest of the grapes and use that wine somewhere else, but you want to capture this nice pink color there, and that takes experience with the vineyard, experience with the grape varietal, and just knowing when, because it's a little darker in the press, but you lose color throughout fermentation and through the winemaking process. So you kind of have to overshoot it a little bit, and then it comes back and you're able to get the right color. So, and color is so key. I mean, the label's gorgeous on here and great artwork, but what sells rosé is just the clear bottle and what's inside. You know, really, when you're looking at the store shelves, seeing the right color for your rosé is really one of the sales pitches. And so I've talked enough about it. Let me taste it and see some tasting this.
And Jeff, after you've had a chance to taste, what would you suggest for some food pairings with this rosé?
Rosés are real versatile because you can kind of pair what you might do with some lighter red wines too, because there's still a little bit of phenolic in there. There's a little structure to it just because it's made from red grapes. I'll tell you, my favorite pairing is kind of a guilty pleasure. I was enjoying, well, actually, I was in Miami in 2016 or 17 because Bonterra Vineyards got the American Winery of the Year from Wine Enthusiast. And I was in Miami celebrating and receiving the award. And I was supposed to meet someone for lunch, and I ordered a bottle of rosé and order of onion rings just to start the day. And who I was supposed to meet never showed up. So basically that was my lunch, with a bottle of rosé and onion rings. And that's been my go-to pairing ever since. So why I think it works, it sounds pretty, not sophisticated, but they're good onion rings. They're nice panko encrusted onion rings. They're pretty crispy and very good. But you have the richness of the fried food, the crunchiness, and the good acidity of the rosé. You kind of think complements that, cuts through the kind of greasiness and the crunch of the food. It cleanses your palate with every sip and every bite. So that's a fun one. It was great because I was on the beach in Miami and just kind of gluttony a little bit, but it was very fun and I enjoyed it. And that was and plus I was just coming from a fun win at this award ceremony. So that was cool. But to take that thing and expand on it. So things that are other fried calamari would work quite well with that too, as well as food wine pairing. Rich cheeses too. I mean, when you think of good things that mix with this good acidity, so if you have a rich cheese with some good fatty content to it, or even a drier cheese that's rich, having that good acidity in there and some structure in the wine really kind of balances really well with that. And that works the same with the Sauv Blanc too. And like Sauv Blanc, we didn't talk about food and wine pairing with that, but like a goat cheese and some like almonds is a nice, great little snack with Sauv Blanc. It's like a go-to. So good crisp wines can handle some wide variety of food and wine pairings, whether it's, and I even say light, the same foods that maybe are light red would work with too. I mean, and any picnic foods too. Honestly, you think of rosé on a nice warm day, anything you can take on a picnic would work perfect. You can see there's a lot of good fruit in this wine. You can taste there's some strawberry and a little bit of watermelon and a little bit of floral in there as well. Just a really very fruit forward type of rosé. And one of the things that kind of keeps this wine a little more interesting too is also, since we take such a great effort in trying to get the color right in the press cycle by how much we squeeze the grapes, we don't have to strip color out later. We're not like, oh, it's too dark, we got to throw bentonite or some sort of fining agent that pulls out color. Because generally when you pull out color, you're also pulling out something else. You're pulling out aromatics or flavor. So by trying to, first of all, it's a dedicated rosé program. We pick the grapes specifically for this program. Because another way you can make rosé is you have a red program, and then you drain off a bit of your red juice and make rosé from it, and the remainder stays in there making a red wine. We don't do that for this program because it's considered. Sorry, my phone's ringing. I apologize. I'm gonna hang up on them.
Jeff is very popular.
Yeah, that's right. Hopefully it won't happen again. I wasn't the boss, hopefully. Anyway, apologize for that interruption. So anyway, we make a dedicated program that's not part of a red program. It's part of, we pick the grapes at the right sugar level, we handle them in the press, and I think it turns out to make a real wine that's real special because it's, we're starting with that thought process from the start of how to make the best rosé possible. And yeah, I think we achieved it. We're going to be bottling the 2020 next week, I believe. So that will be shortly in the market. Heads up. This is the 19, still holding up beautifully. And we're making that transition shortly. It'll probably take a couple months to get to everywhere it needs to go, but certainly by late spring, early summer, it will be out there for sure. Wonderful. So I think it's time to switch gears and move on to some red wines if everybody's ready.
Jeff, can I ask you a couple of questions first?
Sure, sure.
All right, so we have Laura watching on Zoom tonight, and she's wondering if you have any tips for how to be sustainable in a home garden.
Ooh, you know what? Some of the tips are oh yeah, don't take your soil for granted. Always use amendments if you can. Composting, get soil from a local soil producer or compost your own. Um, I'm not the greatest gardener, honestly. I'm more of the winemaker. So I do have a vineyard which I take care of, and I farm at our place, a small 1 acre vineyard. But the other tip I know is don't plant too much, because you always get greedy. You always try to fill your garden space with too many different plants, and all of a sudden everything's growing into everything else, and everything suffers a little bit. So I'm gonna limit my comments to that. Sorry, I can't. I don't have any further ones. I'd hate to spread some wrong information.
No, that was awesome. Thank you. And let's see, we've got a question from Facebook as well. How long have the white wines used their current closures instead of cork?
Oh yeah, those are since I've gotten here. So over 13 years for the Chardonnay and the Sauvignon Blanc. It's been less for the Rosé because it's a new program. And we chose those closures over cork just because we like the freshness that a Stelvin closure has. A cork finish, and we'll get to cork finish on the next two wines. The Merlot and the Cab have cork finish. Does allow some oxygen to permeate through the cork, and these Stelvin closures are pretty much absolutely. It's an absolute seal that you're not going to get any oxygen exchange, so you're not going to get any premature aging through the cork. So those have been from early on with those programs. The initial, actually, history lesson here. If I pan over behind me here, this old photograph here, you can see that in the wall. That's one of the early packages from Bonterra back in '99, and we did have a cork back then, so we've transitioned post to that package right there. So that came in handy. That's been hanging there for forever, and I just got to use it. Anyway, so yeah, but we think it's real important to have that Stelvin closure. Plus, for these types of wines, when you want to crack open that second bottle of rosé, you're ready to go. There's no waiting. You don't have to look for a bottle opener or anything. It's at your fingertips.
Awesome. All right, we have a few more questions, but I'll save them for the end.
Okay, cool. So let's move on to the Merlot. I think is the next. Yeah, we go. Awesome. So Merlot has been a staple in our lineup for quite a while. Has been a bigger skew. Of course, the varietal itself has been maligned for years because of still from Sideways, the movie. It's amazing how what effect that movie has done on the Merlot sales. But we still believe in Merlot. We still like Merlot. I do. I like Merlot. It's a real nice grape because it's got softer tannins, right? Nice fresh fruit. And if you take it seriously and you grow the Merlot in the right places, like our home ranch at McNabb, you can get a really nice wines that are, great color, good body, just a wine that's, kind of gives you everything you want with the red fruit and some structure. And when you smell this wine, and I think a good Merlot should smell like nice ripe plums and taste like ripe plums. And I think that's really what we're trying to capture in this one each year. And by doing so, it means you have to really get the fruit, the grapes nice and ripe. And look, you really make, really walk the vineyard, just taste the grapes on the vine, look at all the signals that you want to look for when you're making the picking decision. Because you only get to pick the grapes once. That's your one. You don't get to do, some vineyards, you may pick them in, stages, but some small vineyards, you got one shot at it and you don't want to miss it. So there's things we look at when we're, so I think ripeness is key to getting this wine just right. So we're going to look at the skins themselves because the grapes will start to dimple a little bit. You'll see them, we call desiccation. They'll shrink a little bit, get a little wrinkly. If you squeeze the grape, you'll see the skin starts to give up color when it's getting close to being ripe. The seeds will actually go from, when they're underripe, a green color to a nice kind of walnut color. And if you're chewing on the grapes too, they'll notice that the grapes seeds will go from like a chewy to a crack. They'll crack in your teeth. So you'll know you get all these little signs are subtle, but you'll know your grapes are getting ripe for the ready to pick for making wine. along with the chemistry, of course, too, because we also do, we're just not shaman walking out there just tasting grapes. We use chemistry, and we do some sampling for acidity and sugar, and making sure we understand where the physiology of where the grape is numerically. But it's a combination of both things. But I think those are keys to get the Merlot just nice and ripe, and then in turn have those nice ripe flavors without any hint of green aromas, because I think that's Merlot grown in the wrong spot, or a spot that ripens too early, sometimes have like a bell pepper or a green bean aroma, which I find is not appropriate for the grape. We really want nice red ripe fruit flavors. There's some blending in this one too. There's a little bit of Petit Syrah in here. Seems to be a really good blender for both Cabernet and Merlot. Add some structure and more color as well. Merlot, the color in Merlot can vary from a nice dark colors to sometimes lighter. So blending in a little bit of Petit Syrah can really give the wine some more heft and some more body. Yeah.
I know we had a few people tasting along with the Chardonnay and the Sauvignon Blanc. Is anybody tasting along with the reds tonight? Let us know. Leave a comment on Facebook or let us know in the chat on Zoom. I'd love to know, for those of you who are tasting along, what you're thinking about the wines.
Yeah. So the wine's tasting as it should right now. Great, nice ripe plum. A little bit of structure, some tannins, little phenolics, but still soft. And the thing about, we haven't talked really about aging wines. People still age some wines, but most people don't. We figured our average consumer ages their wines about 20 minutes or so. They don't lay them down in the cellar. They drive home first and then they open them up. But there's nothing wrong with that. And we know that too. So what we do is we try to make wines that are available to enjoy right away, because we know that. So that's why we make these efforts in the vineyards to pick ripe flavors and pick for soft tannins, because we know how our consumers enjoy our wines, and so we're going to provide wines that are enjoyable right from day one upon release. So, and because of that, you don't need to really age wines like the Cabernets from Napa in the 80s, where you really couldn't touch them for 2 years or so because the tannins were too strong. No, we've come a long way, and we've understood that this is how our wine people is how people enjoy wine. So we're going to make sure that we provide the wines people like. So. And it happens to make a wine that's approachable right from the start. That's great. So, and I think this is like one of them. This is the 19. This is the 19 already, and it's in the marketplace already being sold. But I think because it's already, we make these efforts to manage the growing, manage the fermentation in the wine in the cellar, and aging the wine, and then in turn finish the wine and get it ready for bottling, and gets a wine that's really enjoyable upon day one when it really hits the market. This sees about a small amount of oak. This seems a little bit blend of French and American oak. Not much, around 30% new oak in here, just to not to overpower the wines. And hopefully, as we taste these, it's a common thread that goes throughout the wines, that we're looking for balance. We don't want one-dimensional wines. We want multi-dimensional wines. So you look for wines that actually taste like the varietal they should too. It doesn't really just be very representative of what a Merlot should taste like, what a Chardonnay or Sauvignon Blanc should taste like. So we hope you find that's similar. You find the same conclusion as we do. Cool. So that was the Merlot. Any questions on that? We can move on to the final wine of the flight.
We do have somebody tasting along with this final wine. Cynthia has
Great.
some Chardonnay and some Cabernet.
Awesome. Wonderful. And those are our top two sellers, the Chardonnay and the Cab. We mentioned that earlier about the Chardonnay, but the number one red is our Cabernet. So it kind of makes sense. Those are like the top two varieties in general, in our wine lineup. It's kind of the same with us too. So let's move on to the Cabernet. I have to either get a dump bucket or pour less in my glass. So just excuse me for 1 second. Too good to dump. Sorry about that. Moving on to the Cabernet. So like I said, this is one of the wines that we produce, red wines we produce the most of. And a lot of the same main things I mentioned about ripeness in the Merlot really apply to the Cabernet too. Take a lot of great effort to make sure it's ripe in the vineyard, because honestly, my job's a lot easier if I get to make the picking decision right. I have less to worry about in the cellar, less harsh tannins to deal with, or fine out, or mask, or whatever we do with underripe fruit. So getting those decisions right in the vineyard makes my job easier in the cellar. So in turn, if we, and a lot of the same things apply to from the Merlot too, is that Cabernet is a grape that underripe tends to be vegetal or green bean. And we try to avoid that. We want nice red fruit, cassis, black fruit if we can there too. Hints of cocoa in there as well. So it's and like I said earlier, we want the Cabernet to smell and taste like Cabernet because we want it to be varietally correct if we can. So yeah, so a lot of things apply. Like I said, apply to the Merlot and Cab because they're actually both grapes from Bordeaux, so they kind of grow similarly and have similar flavor profiles. Some blending in here as well. It does see some Petit Syrah as well as a little Malbec too in here as another blender we use in this vineyard for this vine. So we see a little bit of blending here. Generally, it's around 80% Cabernet. We do see, since this is such a large blend. I mean, honestly, we make over 200,000 cases of just this wine right here. So it's a large production, which is great. It means we can get it into more people's hands and get the idea of growing things organically, spread the word there, and just get good wines throughout the country, throughout the world. I mean, we're in over 100 different countries internationally, as well as the United States too. So we're bringing our message one bottle at a time of organic farming and regenerative farming, and all our sustainability measures are getting out there with every bottle. And hopefully not to a preachy way, because we're really not about that. We're more about making quality wine first, and just organics works for us. We hope you appreciate what we're doing, and because we're going to do it anyway. So because one of the reasons we do it is these vineyards are in our backyard and we live amongst them, so why would we bring synthetic pesticides or herbicides to our backyard if there's not necessary? So it's as simple as that. For this health and safety of all our employees who work in the vineyards, and there's a lot of reasons that are important to consider, especially this week as we start to think about Earth Day and the legacy that Earth Day has for the last since the 70s when it started. So I think that, if you have any questions on the Cabernet, which is tasting spot on, this is the 19 vintage. Yeah. It's funny, it's a little side note, but you can I'm sure everybody knows it's in who works in the wine industry, but you can quickly see the success of a wine or of a winery of what vintage they're on right now, especially when it comes to reds. If you see 16 and 15 red vintages on the shelf, you're like, okay, they're not, but we're rushing to get these out because we have a nice demand for this, which is nice. It shows that these wines have, people are seeking them out, which is great. And we have current vintages on the shelf all over the world. So it could be a challenge for me trying to get the wines ready in time, but it's a good challenge to have.
Jeff, we do have some curious viewers about the proof of the Cabernet.
Meaning, percentage alcohol is what you're asking, you think?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's around 14.1. So 14 per 1 or 2, somewhere around there.
Awesome.
So, yeah, and actually we look for that. We found that over the years, a little more alcohol means a little more ripeness in the vineyard. In turn, honestly, in the trade too, also meant some nicer scores too. We actually saw all our higher scoring wines tended to be around the 14.2 alcohol, which I think in turn is just because the fruit was a little riper and has a little more flavor to it.
And then the last question for you before we do our trivia giveaway for tonight. Mary here on Zoom is wondering what the significance or connection of the bird on the label is.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, I wish there was a better answer, but we're just trying to say these are some of the things we find in the vineyard. There's not a specific bird or a specific purpose it does. It just shows that we have a lot of life in our vineyard. So if you see all the bottles side by side, each bottle has a little different critter on there that is usually a beneficial insect or a beneficial animal. I know if we get too technical, I know we had a poster for a while with a finch on it, and people wondering what the significance was. And then someone called in or told us via email that we shouldn't put invasive species on the posters. They were very angry that we celebrated an invasive bird. So this is a generic bird. It's just maybe a little license from our graphic arts department, but they really wanted to capture the life that we talked about earlier in the vineyards and how it's part of our whole existence here.
Awesome. All right, one more comment before we have you ask the trivia question. Cynthia, who's tuning in tonight, she is tasting along and she is eating garlic stuffed olives with her cab, and she says that they pair wonderfully.
Awesome. There we go. That's the food and wine pairing kind of rule, is what the best pairing is what you like the best. Really, don't be lulled into thinking you have to pair one thing with the other. Get experimental. You find that, Chardonnay and popcorn works great. You'll find that, the one I like is people think is crazy is we don't make a sparkling, but when I do have sparkling wine, cold fried chicken and sparkling is like crazy, like a good picnic, because it's like cold and greasy, and the sparkling, all the acid in that cuts through it even better. So there's really just there's some fun pairings out there. I mean, we didn't taste the Zinfandel today, but I love Zinfandel and pizza. I mean, so don't feel bashful about pairing really good comfort foods with wines, because there's a lot of great matches out there too. Cool.
All right, everybody, it's time for some exciting trivia. Jeff is going to ask you a question. I'm going to monitor the chat for everybody who answers correctly, and one lucky person is going to win a $100 gift card to our stores. So I hope you're paying attention tonight, because I know the question already, and he did give the answer. So,
okay. All right. Shall I ask the question?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm ready.
Okay. So somewhere in what I rambled on for the last hour, I mentioned what the primary grape in our rosé was, and if you can remember that, please put it in the chat. Whoa.
So
fast.
While we wait for people to give their answers, so also on the line tonight, we have Josh and Megan. And Josh, you've been tasting along. Which wine was your favorite tonight?
So I have to, I'm with Jeff. I like all of the wines, obviously, but the Sauvignon Blanc is, I don't know if it's because it's beautiful out today, but that's really showing well right now. The acidity in the wine and just the freshness of it. And I drink that with, just about everything I'm cooking. If I'm having a steak, I'll have a sip of the Sauvignon Blanc, just because it does, it cleanses the palate, and it's a really a great wine, and something to look forward to with the summer as well. So I'm ready to drink some more Sauvignon Blanc with the warm weather that's coming up.
Awesome. Well, Lisa, Megan, and I were not tasting along tonight, so I think that the three of us need to go have dinner and have our own wine tasting.
That's a great idea.
That's a great idea.
All right, we've got a lot of correct answers. Good job, everybody. The correct answer to the question is Grenache. And I have put everybody's name who answered correctly into an online randomizer. And our winner tonight is Tracy. Congratulations, Tracy. So Tracy, you have my email. Shoot me an email and we will get you your gift card. Tracy actually put in the chat that she's heading over to Store 50 to get a little bit of wine tomorrow. So I wish we could get you the gift card before tomorrow, but it will take a couple of days.
It doesn't expire, does it? I'm sure they can use it in the future.
Yes, it expires at the end of the Wicked Wine Sale. No, I'm just kidding. Our gift cards don't expire. Don't worry, guys. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Jeff, thank you so much for being here tonight. This was such a fun presentation. You did great. I loved tonight's event. My cat also loved it. He was at the door whining to come in this whole time.
Well, thank you. It was a lot of fun, and hopefully I was able to share some information and a little experience what it's like out here in California, up in Mendocino County, making these wines, and actually, the fact that the wines are in your stores and you can go out and taste it, you get a taste of Mendocino County any day you want.
Absolutely. And we hope that when we can start traveling again, that you'll be able to join us for Wine Week in maybe January next year, maybe the following year. We hope to see you in real life soon.
Yeah, that's a fun event. I enjoy going out for that. I came out on that's the last trip I did before we got in lockdown was that February, or was it February or January of
January. Yep.
2020. That was my last trip. I haven't traveled since. So I went out with a bang to a really good event what you guys put on out there.
Awesome. Well, thank you. We can't wait to see you again. For those of you tuning in tonight, if you are interested in learning about some more sustainable wines, we have a couple more events this week. Tomorrow, we will have the Wente sisters. If you came to any of our 90 days events, you have already met Nikki Wente, but she will have her sister with her tomorrow. And then we have the Neal family on, with Mark Neal specifically, on Thursday night. And then one final wine tasting on the 29th with John Williams of Frog's Leap. And in between those last two, we also have a bourbon tasting. So we hope you'll join us for more live events. We love hanging out with you guys. So visit explore.liquorandwineoutlets.com and you can find all of our upcoming events there. We hope to see you soon and have a great night, everybody.
Take care.
Bye. Thanks again,
Have a
Jeff.
great
Thanks,
night.
Josh.
You're welcome.
Thanks,
It was
Megan. Thanks,
fun.
Lisa.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.